If you run more than a handful of accounts on your phone, you have hit this wall. You set everything up perfectly, clean proxy, fresh profile, and the platform still flags you the moment you log in on an emulator. Meanwhile, someone else doing the same thing on a real device sails right through. Today I want to explain why that happens, when an emulator is genuinely the smarter, cheaper choice, and when you actually need a real phone in the cloud, because the honest answer is not the one I make money from. Disclosure first, as always. I run a cloud phone operation, real Android handsets sitting in a rack here in Singapore that you rent and control remotely. So yes, I sell one side of this comparison. That is exactly why I am going to be careful to tell you where an emulator wins, because if I only told you to buy real phones, I would be the thing this channel exists to call out. By the end, you will know which tool fits your actual job, not my sales pitch. Here is the plan. First, what an emulator really is versus a cloud phone. Then why emulators get caught for account work, the actual technical tells. Then where each one genuinely fits and the cost reality that nobody puts on the pricing page. So let us define the two things clearly, because people mix them up constantly. An Android emulator is software running on your computer that pretends to be a phone. BlueStacks, LD Player, Genymotion, the Android Studio emulator. It is a virtual machine drawing a fake phone on your PC. A cloud phone is the opposite. It is a real physical Android device sitting in a data center somewhere. A genuine handset with a genuine chipset, and you control its screen over the internet. One is a simulation of a phone, the other is an actual phone you happen to be holding from far away. And the names matter here because each of those emulators was built for a different job, and that tells you a lot. BlueStacks and LD Player are gaming emulators made so you can run mobile games on a big screen with a mouse and keyboard, and they are genuinely good at that. Genymotion is a developer tool, the kind of thing a team wires into their testing pipeline to check an app across a bunch of Android versions. The Android Studio emulator, the AVD, ships with Google's own dev kit and exists so app builders can test on a fake phone without owning 50 real ones. Notice what none of those were built for, looking like a real human's personal handset to a platform that is actively hunting fakes. That difference sounds academic until a platform goes looking for it, and modern platforms look hard. An emulator leaves fingerprints all over the place. The build properties of the system give it away. The model and manufacturer strings often still say emulator or generic. The hardware looks wrong. A real phone has dozens of real sensors, an accelerometer, a gyroscope, a barometer, all producing messy real-world data, while an emulator either fakes them badly or does not have them at all. Let me get specific about those tells, because this is the part people wave their hands at. Deep in every Android device, there is a file of build properties, and on an emulator, some of those values quietly scream virtual machine. There are flags that mark the thing as a QMA virtual device. The model reads as a generic SDK build. The manufacturer comes back as something no carrier ever shipped. The telephony stack is another giveaway. A real phone has a real SIM, a real carrier, a real signal that drifts as you move, while an emulator either has none of that or has an obviously faked version that never changes. Then the sensors. A person carrying a real phone produces a constant stream of tiny, messy readings, the accelerometer twitching as they breathe, the gyroscope drifting, the light sensor changing as they walk past the window. An emulator's sensor data is either missing entirely or far too clean, a flat, perfect line that no human hand ever produced. And to get an emulator anywhere close to passing, people root it and run tools to hide the root, which becomes a permanent cat and mouse game. The hiding tool updates, the platform learns the new tell, the tool updates again, and you're spending your evenings maintaining a disguise instead of running your accounts. Then there is the integrity check, the big one. Google has a system now called Play Integrity, the successor to what people knew as SafeNyNet, and a lot of serious apps use it to ask the operating system one simple question: are you a real certified device? A stock emulator fails that check, because it cannot prove it is genuine hardware running genuine software. The app gets back a fail and quietly decides you are not a real user. You never see an error, you just get throttled, shadow limited, or banned, and you blame the proxy when the problem was the device the whole time. It helps to understand what that check actually reports back in plain language. Play Integrity hands the app a few labels. There is a basic label, which roughly means this looks like an Android device with a real account behind it. There is a device label, which means the OS looks genuine and has not obviously been tampered with. And there is a strong label, the hardest one, which leans on a hardware-backed key that a real phone has and a simulation does not. A normal handset out of a real person's pocket clears all three without anyone thinking about it. A stock emulator usually fails the device label outright, and it can never honestly earn the strong one because it simply does not have the hardware to back it. I am not going to walk you through dodging that because that is exactly the line this channel does not cross. The point is just to understand why the simulation gets caught. The other emulator problem is sameness. If you spin up 20 emulator instances to run 20 accounts, they tend to look identical under the hood, same virtual hardware, same fingerprints, same everything, to a platform that links accounts. 20 identical devices logging in is a giant flashing sign that says one person, 20 accounts. Real phones are all a little different from each other, even the same model, and that natural variation is part of what keeps them separate in the platform's eyes. Let me walk you through how this actually kills accounts, because it almost never looks like a ban at first. You spin up an emulator, you log in, everything seems fine for a day or two. Behind the scenes, the app ran an integrity check on first launch and got a fail, so it has already filed you under suspicious. Now your reach starts dropping, your posts go to nobody, your actions get rate limited for no reason you can see. You think the proxy is dirty, so you swap proxies, and nothing changes because the proxy was never the problem. A couple weeks in, after you have poured real time into warming that account, it gets pulled. The device was flagged from the first minute, and everything after that was the platform slowly turning the tap off. That is the quiet death, and it is the single most common story I hear from people who came to me after burning a whole batch. Now here is the part my competitors in the cloud phone space will not say, because I would rather you trust me than oversell you. Emulators are great for the right job. If you are developing an app and need to test it, an emulator is faster, free, and resets in seconds. If you are playing a game, automating a low-risk task, learning how Android works, or doing anything where nobody is running a device integrity check on you, an emulator is the obvious choice. It costs almost nothing and runs on the computer you already own. For a huge range of work, paying for a real cloud phone would be a waste of your money. The emulator only falls apart in one specific situation, which is account-heavy work on platforms that check whether you are a real device. Social platforms, anything with serious anti-fraud, anything that runs play integrity or fingerprints the hardware. That is the moment the simulation gets caught and a real device walks through, and that is the only moment a cloud phone is worth its higher price. So what does a cloud phone give you that the emulator cannot? It is a real certified device, so it passes the integrity checks that kill emulators. It has a genuine, unique hardware fingerprint, so 10 cloud phones look like 10 different real people instead of 10 clones. It has real sensors producing real data, and critically, it is a separate physical device per identity, which is the cleanest possible isolation because there is no shared virtual machine underneath that ties them together. For the work that gets emulators banned, that realness is the entire value. It is worth understanding how you actually drive these things because it is more familiar than people expect. A cloud phone is a real handset, but you reach it over the network, usually through the same ad-day tooling Android developers already use, plus a remote screen. So you can script it, automate it, push files to it, run your normal workflow, just pointed at a device that happens to be in a rack instead of in your hand. On my side, the work is the boring physical part. Real phones powered on, kept cool, kept connected, swapped when one wears out. That maintenance is most of what you are actually paying for, because a real device per identity is the clean isolation, and clean isolation has a physical cost that an emulator simply does not carry. Let us talk cost honestly, because this is where people make the wrong call. An emulator is basically free. You pay in electricity and your own PC time. A cloud phone costs real money per device per month because somewhere a real handset is powered on, connected, and maintained for you. So on paper, the emulator always looks cheaper. But the real cost of an emulator is the bans. If you burn 10 accounts that took you weeks to warm up because the device got flagged, that emulator was the most expensive thing in your stack. The right way to think about it is not price per month. It is cost per surviving account. On soft work, the emulator wins that math easily. On hard accounts, work the cloud phone wins it because survival is the whole game. Let me make that concrete without inventing numbers I cannot stand behind. Picture two stacks doing the same hard account work. The emulator stack costs you almost nothing to run, but say most of the accounts you warm up get flagged and pulled, so only a small fraction survive. The cloud phone stack costs real money every month, but a large majority of those accounts live. Now divide the cost by the accounts still standing at the end of the month. The free option, the one that looked cheap, can easily end up costing more per surviving account than the paid one, because you are paying again and again to replace what keeps dying. That is the whole trick of this category, the sticker price and the real price point in opposite directions, and only the surviving account number tells you the truth. There is one more piece, and it is the combination that actually works. A real device with a bad IP still gets linked by its network, and a real device on a clean mobile IP is close to the strongest setup there is. So the people doing serious multi-account work tend to pair a cloud phone with a mobile proxy, real device plus real carrier address, because that closes both the device gap and the network gap at once. An emulator on a data center IP is the opposite. Fake device on an obvious network caught twice over. So here is the honest decision, plainly. If you are testing apps, gaming, learning, or running low-risk tasks where nothing checks your device, use an emulator and do not let anyone, including me, sell you more than you need. If you are running real accounts on platforms that check for real devices, an emulator will keep getting you flagged no matter how clean your proxy is, and that is exactly when a real cloud phone earns its cost. Match the tool to the target, not to the marketing. If you want the full breakdown which cloud phone setups actually pass the integrity checks, which emulators are fine for which jobs, and how the device and network layers fit together, it is all at blackhatreview.org/category/cloud phones. I run real phones myself, so I am biased, and that is exactly why I tell you to test the device the same way you would test a proxy. Hold it to the check that matters for your platform. Next up, I am doing antidetect browsers, multi-login versus go-login versus Dolphin versus AdSpower, because the browser fingerprint is the third layer most people get wrong. If that is useful, subscribe. There is one tested, honest review here every weekday. I will see you in the next one.